From July 1st to July 3rd, 1863, the small town of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, became the site of one of the most important battles in American history. The Battle of Gettysburg was a turning point in the Civil War, where the Union Army stopped the Confederate Army from invading the North. General Robert E. Lee, who led the Confederate Army, hoped a big victory in the North would weaken the Union's will to fight and possibly lead to peace talks. He wanted to make a strong statement by winning on Union soil, but Union General George Meade and his Army of the Potomac stood firm and fought back. Over 3 days of fierce fighting, the two-sided clashed at places like Little Round Top, the Wheat Field, and Cemetery Hill. On the third day, Lee ordered a risky attack known as Pickett's Charge, where thousands of Confederate soldiers charged across an open field towards the Union lines. It ended in disaster for the Confederates, who were forced to retreat. The battle caused more than 50,000 casualties, making it the deadliest battle of the Civil War. While both sides suffered greatly, the Union victory at Gettysburg stopped the Confederate Army's advance and gave the North new hope. Later that year, President Abraham Lincoln visited Gettysburg to deliver his famous Gettysburg Address, honoring the soldiers who fought and reminding the nation of its importance of freedom and unity. Before Gettysburg, the Union had suffered a series of defeats. Battles like Antietam, Fredericksburg, and Chancellorsville had left the North feeling discouraged and unsure if they could win the war. The victory at Gettysburg, however, gave the Union Army new confidence. It proved that they could stand up to General Lee and win. This victory gave the Northern soldiers and civilians new hope that the war was winnable. It helped boost the morale of the Union Army and gave them the strength to keep fighting.
The end of Confederate invasion. The Battle of Gettysburg ended the Confederate Army's attempt to invade the North. General Lee believed that a victory in the North would force the Union to give up and possibly even lead to peace talks. He thought that a big win on the Union soil would weaken the Northern morale. But after the defeat at Gettysburg, the Confederate Army had to retreat back to the South. Lee's hopes for a victory in the North were crushed, and the Confederate would never again have the strength to invade Northern territory. This marked the end of the South's ability to fight offensively in the North.
Before Gettysburg, the Union had suffered a series of defeats. Battles like Antietam, Fredericksburg, and Chancellorsville had left the North feeling discouraged and unsure if they could win the war. The victory at Gettysburg, however, gave the Union Army new confidence. It proved that they could stand up to General Lee and win. This victory gave the Northern soldiers and civilians new hope that the war was winnable. It helped boost the morale of the Union Army and gave them the strength to keep fighting.
The Confederate loss and its lasting impact. The Battle of Gettysburg was a huge loss for the Confederate Army. Over 28,000 Confederate soldiers were killed, wounded, or missing. That's almost a third of Lee's army. The South had fewer people and fewer resources than the North, and they could not easily replace these lost soldiers. This heavily loss weakened the Confederate Army, making it harder for them to keep fighting. The South's ability to continue the war was greatly reduced after Gettysburg, while the Confederacy would continue to fight for 2 more years. They were no longer in a position to win the war. Historical development. The Battle of Gettysburg wasn't just a big military fight. It was the turning point of the entire Civil War. It stopped General Lee's invasion of the North and gave the Union Army a much-needed victory. After Gettysburg, it was clear that the Confederacy would have a much harder time winning the war. The South was new on the defensive, while the Union was getting strength and confidence. Months later, the President Abraham Lincoln visited Gettysburg to give his famous Gettysburg Address. In his speech, Lincoln honored the soldiers who died at the battle and reminded the country that the war was about more than just winning. It was about fighting for liberty and equality. Why Gettysburg matters. The Battle of Gettysburg was a huge turning point in the Civil War. Before the battle, the Confederacy was gaining ground and even winning on some fronts, but Gettysburg proved that the Union Army could stop the South. The battle also gave the North a new sense of hope and confidence. The victory at Gettysburg gave people in the Union a reason to believe that they could win the war and preserve the country. Later, when Lincoln gave his Gettysburg Address, he reminded everyone that the war was about to defending country's founding principles, freedom, and equality. Gettysburg became a symbol on the sacrifices made to preserve these ideals, and it remained one of the most important moments in American history.